Good to see everybody here this morning and opportunity for folks to check in and catch up with each other on happenings in your county. As usual, I'm Ish Herrera with the team at California Forward here to continue providing support to the facilitation of this effort alongside of Jesse, Dr. Walrod, and Jeff Ball, and many others at the OCBC team who are supporting this effort. As you come on board, continue to drop your name, your affiliation, and in the chat, so folks can continue to monitor who's here and who's here from the different stakeholder sector groups that are part of this effort. So welcome. Buenos días. Si gustan dar su información, su nombre, su organización en el chat, los invitamos a que compartan allí y sigan monitoreando quiénes son los colegas que los acompañan aquí esta mañana con el esfuerzo. So at this point, I'd like to move us into the second part of the agenda, which is an opportunity for folks from the public, from the county that are here on the call today that are not members of the HRTC to make comments, offer questions related to this effort, this California Jobs First effort that we've been almost a year on this journey, getting pretty close. So any members from the community, from the public that would like to come off mute or raise their hand and offer some comments? Feel free to jump in. You're not seeing any on my end. I know, Jesse, you helped me monitor the portal.
Yeah,
I don't see
nothing yet, but we'll give it 30, maybe 15 more seconds, 30 more seconds.
Sure thing. And appreciate you all being here this morning and continuing your dedication to this effort. You know, one thing we were sharing with reps at the state a few weeks ago was just singing your praises on how there's been very little attrition with all of you on this effort, which has been really, I think, a testament to the appetite and the commitment you all have for working together and advancing these efforts in a different way. So kudos to you all for continuing to show up and contribute in the ways that you do. All right, well, let's move on to the next item, which is an opportunity for those of you who are on the HRTC, who are part of this governance body, to come off mute, raise your hand, provide some updates on maybe programs and activities that you're rolling out in the county that complement or are related to this effort that you maybe want to share with your colleagues, and maybe questions you have. Feel free to come off mute and raise your hand. Si gustan compartir información sobre actividades o eventos que están tomando a cabo en el condado de Orange, que gusten compartir con sus compañeros aquí hoy, los invitamos que levanten la manita virtual o prendan el micrófono y hagan sus comentarios. So let's turn to folks to see if anybody wants to come off mute or share anything. So we'll open the floor. And maybe while we wait on a couple folks to consider sharing, Linda, if you're here, I know at some point in the last meeting or two, you had shared some information on an Innovation Week event that was organizing and getting ready to launch in the county. If that certainly struck a chord with me as something that would be good for folks to consider attending. And if you have any updates, you'd like to share some developments with that event, certainly want to welcome you to share with the group here on what the next steps are. And I'm looking through here to see if Linda's here yet, but
yeah, I don't see her either.
Not yet. We'll certainly give her a chance to share more about that event at a future meeting. But any comments or updates from folks before we move on? Anything on your end, Jesse? Anyone raising their hand? Okay.
If nothing, we just keep moving.
Yeah, we'll keep continuing here with the program and ahead of schedule. We'll move into item 4 of today's agenda, and this is an update on the stakeholder mapping exercise. Many of you will remember that this was a very useful exercise that was conducted by our colleague Brian McNamara, who's here today to walk us through some of this information. It was part of the regional plan part 1 that the researchers and the research team conducted during the first few months of this effort last year in 2023. And, it's been some of the findings were shared. It's been a great partnership with Brian and the group out of Esri who built the tool and are really trying to find ways to make this value add and useful to all of you and the broader public in Orange County. And so just to provide a little bit of an update and a bit of an overview, we have Brian here today to walk us through some of this information, review the site with you all, and really get some feedback from you all and some comments on how this tool can be useful, be valuable to your efforts as individual organizations, but also the value that this brings to the collective and the group as a whole with this work that we're doing with California Jobs First. So let me turn to Brian and welcome Brian to share his screen and briefly introduce himself and walk us through this next portion of the agenda. Brian, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. Really appreciate the introduction. Happy to be here and continue to support this effort. Let me share my screen real quick. 1 second. Coming through now.
There we are. We can see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for having me back today. My name's Brian McNamara. I'm a consultant with Esri Inc. We're working under the data and research team under Dr. Wallace Walrod, and really excited to be here today and share an update with y'all and things that the group has been doing for stakeholder mapping and specifically for an online interactive tool that was developed in an easier way to kind of access records and hopefully drive some collaboration within the larger group and the public as a whole. So this is really building on some previous work done last summer. Let me go and switch slides really here. By NP Strategies and the work they did collecting information out in the field with different stakeholders, and that was led by Rebecca Alvarez. So really excited to take her great work and her team and everything they did and kind of expand upon that and host it back to you all today. So my presentation is up in 3 parts. We're going to go over a little bit of background information and then talk about the data visualization side, and then we're going to dive into a quick demo, and I'll be sharing that link with you all as public when I get there as well to kind of showcase what we created and get some feedback, see how it resonates with everybody, and that's the game plan. So if we think back to last year, I know it's been a little while, summer 2023, there are a lot of surveys going out, and one of them was the stakeholder mapping survey, and that was done from about April to July 2023, and NP Strategies presented on it a couple times in the past. This one is from June 30th, so I have a couple of slides up here just for context to kind of jog our memories and provide some additional information. So this survey specifically gathered information for different community groups and organizations within the Orange County area. So people who provide services within Orange County, and they were self-reported by them. And it was gathered through SurveyMonkey, and that was taken together and compiled into a series of spreadsheets, a database essentially, with different information, whether that was your name, contact information, and what each organization did. And I'll jump back real quick, and there are some example questions. If some of y'all probably participated in them, like what areas did you serve, what type of organization you are, community-based, workforce organization, California Native American tribe, and this is a quick snapshot. Like there are a lot of questions, a lot of multiple choice ones, so we aren't going to review that today. Really focusing on the visualization part of it. But from that was created the database, and then from that, each stakeholder group, we have these partner snapshots, if you remember, where they have this different information about where they serve, who they serve, contact information, there's a lot to digest and an amazing amount of information. And we wanted to take that and expand on it and serve it back up so as be able to be consumed in a more easily to understand, in a more easily understood way. And that's why we created a web viewer, just to help expedite that. And one of the reasons for this is to really drive different collaboration and partnership opportunities. So these, thinking back again, this is the purpose of the mapping effort, is right to gather the who's who of the area, and then find a way to connect individuals, connect organizations, and a way to do more. So we don't have to click through a big spreadsheet, and we're able to have serve that out into a more interactive way where you can search for it more easily, all in one spot, filter through organizations, see what's in your area or what type of organization you're looking for. So that's the short version for it. I'm going to click over and we're going to do a quick demo. And then I'll click around some and walk through how it can be used. And then, I'll open up this to questions as well. I'll share this link here in a second. All right. A quick refresh. Perfect. So when you first access the website, there's going to be a excuse me, an info box that pops up and really summarizes, what I've been talking about the last 5 minutes, as well as the information on the last 4 slides. Summarizes that into about 3 or 4 sentences, while also providing a contact email address if you have more information. And there's some more links for additional background information. But this is the first thing that pops up. So it describes what was done when, where this data was for, and how you can get more help if needed. All right, so we'll close out of that. And this entire website is designed to be interactive. So I'll just scroll over things will highlight. Everything's essentially clickable. So if you see it, you can click it. And I'll kind of walk through the formatting of it. So on the left, just like you see, you have a list of organizations. And on the right, we have some organizational details. And you have this big map on the bottom right. So you kind of know where you are. So just coming in, I'll click on an organization. It's going to zoom you right to it, and talk about, what is this organization. So I clicked on Alzheimer's Orange County, and this text here is all from the survey. So it's that great information that was provided to us, and we're just hosting it back out. So you have contact information, the work they do, and then kind of the sectors they serve. So you see areas surveyed, as well as who they serve, and the resources they provide. So here's the resources provided: seniors who experience health issues related to aging. And you have this box up here, which is just some categories, which we called sectors in the original survey. So that's where this came from. Again, everything's very interactive. So I'm going to zoom out. Sorry if it kind of scrolls around for a second, just to show something. So if you see an address, you can just click on it and it's going to take you right to it. So everything's designed to be very straightforward, to make it easier for any user. So as I click through things, if I want more information on the American Indian Chamber of Commerce, I click on it and it just pops right up and it takes me right to it. Now, I mentioned earlier, this is for organizations that service Orange County, even if they don't have a physical office in Orange County. So that's why these are gray, because they're outside the county limits, but they're still, the information is still gathered, so they're still included as well. All right, I'm going to scroll to the top. You see these collaborative voting member service areas. These are different filters. So if you want to see who's a voting member, you can just click yes, and you're going to see it kind of refresh and it shortened the list. Again, highly interactive, just so you can see, kind of narrow down the organizations you're trying to view. So same thing in the service areas. If I'm in, let me scroll down into to Irving, or I can just type it in up here. I'll click on it. And that way it's going to limit all the organizations to just those within Irving. So maybe I'm involved, and again, to help drive collaboration, you want to see who all is in the Irving, or who services the Irving area. So that's one way to kind of limit that long list of organizations, is just by your geographic areas that are preset in here. Another way, let's see, by service sector, and these are different categories. And these came straight from the survey. You know, remember at the beginning of the presentation, we talked about the California Native American tribe, community-based organizations, education. So I'm going to click on this one, and now it's narrowed down to even more. So if you're looking for a way to get involved, or if you're already involved and you want to see what other education communities, organizations are in the Irving community, that were part of the stakeholder mapping effort, you can just click on it and it narrows it down to 3. So you don't have to click through all the dots or scroll through lots of things. It's just served out right up front, right here. All right. And we'll get rid of that filter. Additionally, let's say you're in Irving, but you want to collaborate with somebody in Santa Ana. You have a joint opportunity, and you want to try to find an organization. You can click Santa Ana, and again, that's going to add to the list. So now you can view all Santa Ana and Irving organizations. And again, you can keep filtering by different sectors. So I'll click on community-based organization. Here you go. And these sectors, right, came from the survey. You'll see these gray highlights, right? Well, you can't see when I scroll over it, sorry. On the left, you'll see the gray highlight under the red title, and that's where they come from. So, and you'll see multiple, because everybody has a primary sector, service sector, what they primarily do, but they can also have secondary service sectors. And these were categorized how they were provided, within the survey. So we weren't picking primary and secondary. It's just how it was self-reported is how we're hosting it up. But the filter is going to search through all of them. So one quick last thing, I'll clear out the filters. If you see on some of these, let's see if I can find a good one. There's a lot of text here. So we don't want everybody to have to read through this to find the exact word you were looking for. I'll looking here. It said equity. So let's see if I want to find every organization that has equity in their profile. I can just type by any keyword. So I did equity, and it just popped right up. And you can still filter these by, different sectors or service areas. So it's really interactive. And this was a great way to take all that text. Click on another one. So we aren't having to read through profiles and Word docs and PDFs, and it's very searchable. So we can type in seniors too, and highly interactive. So you can get what you're looking for a lot quicker. So, all right, that is the short version. I'll only go ahead and drop, and that's all I had to present, but we left a lot of time for questions. And I'll share the link with y'all right quick. And I see a hand raised for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Let's open it up to the group, and we do have a first hand up from Tony. Tony, welcome. Good morning, and let's turn to you.
Good morning. This is a really great product. What I'm wondering is if we might add something to it, and this may affect other organizations, and they may want to share this. So in your category of what sector you belong to, you had to choose one. In our case, the American Indian Chamber of Commerce of California, we perceive ourselves primarily as a chamber. But we might have also said, oh, put us under the California Native American tribes, because we do service, we have an advisory group, etc. And then we might also, we have an Apex Accelerator, which does direct technical assistance for small businesses. And that's probably true for a lot of organizations. And just like in your service area, you allowed people to do a primary and secondary. I'm wondering if it's possible to go back and add other categories. So the 12 that the state came up with weren't perfect, but at least it's standardized. And I'm just wondering if we might be able to add something that would allow groups to choose other areas so that it would also be searchable by that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we can definitely consider. I think since it can apply to other organizations as well, just making sure you know, that it's a bucket that can include others who provide similar. Don't want to limit it, right? Just one tag for one organization. But if there's a way we could get some additional groupings, we can see how we can fit that in. Certainly.
Well, I was thinking we could start with the groupings that we already have. So not creating any new names, new categories, but allowing groups to identify themselves within more than one category that's already existing.
Okay. Yeah, I know. And maybe that's just more of a refresh to circle back and contact them. I did say secondary. You are correct. And they were allowed to select more than one. Sorry, I should have been more specific. So it's primary, and then the secondary is actually a group. So like this one right here, which one did I click on? Anaheim. Okay, so they are employer business or business associations, the primary group, and then all these others were secondary. Sorry. So secondary isn't limited to one. So I apologize. I wasn't very clear on that previously.
Oh, so maybe we didn't fill it out in ours as full as we want to. So maybe we should go back and make sure that we've completed all of the options on the form.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're on here and your organization is on here and something looks wrong, please absolutely you know, send that my way. I'll throw out my email here in the chat right after this. Absolutely. And we can help make some updates there.
So as other people think about this, the one is the stakeholder mapping was asked. I mean, it had to be done, so it was a deliverable. But I mean, I think it's in the sense of, you know, the state and the federal government are moving towards just far more, you know, collaborative, let's say, grant proposals or submissions. And so this is kind of the point. The whole point of this is his Orange County is so big, it'd be difficult for everyone to know all these organizations and all that they do. It's supposed to just make it a lot easier. So as you know, you think about whether it's a grant, not even as it relates to, you know, SURF or what is the Regional Investment Initiative kind of grant that we're eventually going to move forward projects, but broadly speaking, as all of you work towards grants and other sources of funding, could there be other partners here that you were unaware of? We think about these kind of cross-sector collaboratives as a mechanism for Orange County to be stronger than other regions or cities as you try to submit for grants and for funding. So the whole point is, like, we kind of develop this tool. Hopefully, it makes it easier for people to collaborate and not allow, well, I had no idea this group exists or what they did, maybe as a reason. So I think part of this is, as Tony said, you know, confirm that your information is correct, but you know, is this tool even useful? Is it going to be useful? Because if it's not useful for this group, then, you know, it's going to be hard for us to want to maybe spread it beyond this group. So I think given everyone's background, it'd be helpful to know how this could be used to be effective. And then we could think about, you know, socializing it and spreading it to all the orgs that are kind of listed and haven't submitted information for this.
Thanks, Jesse. Let's open it up to others who may have
There's some
questions.
questions in the chat. Brian, if you can see them and start.
Yeah. I shared the link. Yeah, if the link's not working, please let me know. I just opened it up in a private browser to make sure I didn't have any cookies or anything hidden in the background.
Let me read that question for you, Brian. So we have a question from Andrew. How many organizations are represented within the tool?
Right. So I'll go back and see if I can click on it behind this toolbar. Give me 1 second. So every organization that was surveyed in last summer, I want to say, I'm going to check before giving out a number, to be honest. But it was reported, you know, however many NP strategies collected is what was hosted up. Give me 1 second.
I don't know. Is Rebecca on the Zoom today?
No, she's not.
Oh, she's not. Okay.
I'll have to get that number and give it back to you. It was on a slide from last year, but I can get that and share it with you.
Seems like a lot of the questions revolve around updating the database or adding to the database for those organizations that have come on subsequently.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to huddle up about a process for that, because the main effort was concluded last summer.
Yeah, folks are asking about how they can verify that their org is on there.
Well, you can go to the link and verify.
Yeah,
Sure.
you share the link and then let us know what needs to be updated.
Absolutely. So just click the search bar and type in your organization. You know, maybe I know some have and signs, some have and, so maybe just do a couple of keywords and see what it should pop right up. So here's Boys and Girls Club of Garden Grove and Greater Anaheim as an example, but that's going to be the best way to search for your individual organization.
Brian, there's a question if there's a way to export information.
There is not from this viewpoint. I know when the results were shared from the actual survey last summer, I believe it was shared there. So I'll have to get back to them and see where that data lives, whether it's in a previous presentation or it's on the data hub, and that's where this is linked from. Where the actual, I'll say the large Excel file or at least the findings. There was some, I'll say, personal information that we did exclude from it. You know, some of these organizations don't have an office, so people put their home address. So obviously we did not include that. Any dot represented here, we made sure to move so it wasn't, you know, a privacy concern. But I'll get back with you. I'll grab it from the chat and provide a link or a link or describe where that data is. I think it's on a past meeting folder.
I think
So
it
I
might
think your question, did this all start on Excel file, but thinking that just having that on a website wasn't user-friendly enough, we developed this tool. So we'll confer on that source and get that out to everybody if they prefer that. We just thought this would actually be easier than using using just Excel.
Great, thanks. Brian, we have a question from Gary. Gary, go ahead. No, you're on mute, Gary.
Thank you. This appears to be a useful tool, but I know you're looking for reaction from the group. I don't think we're in a position to give much of a reaction until we have a chance to have access to this tool and use it and kind of do our own discovery on it and then get back with you. So my question is, when would we have access to this so in our leisure we can go over and navigate it?
The link was put in the chat, Gary.
Yeah, so Gary, the whole point, we didn't want to leave a link without I could have put this in the packet without context. And so it was better that he kind of pilot it for you here a little bit. And then of course, you know, this entire time this is a living website. You can go ahead and by next week or even the next month. And then of course, any feedback is welcome. But we wanted to have you guided first before we, you know, had you access it, but now you do. And yes, by all means, everyone here, please test drive this a bit and let us know your thoughts.
Great. Yosefo, go ahead.
Yeah, Jesse, in your comments, something came up for me because it sounds like you want to know before we roll this out more broadly, is there value and what are the use cases? And it just made me think of like scanning the landscape for similar type of products. And so a couple that come to mind that aren't exactly the same, but I think we could kind of learn from their use cases is like the OC Nonprofit Central, I think is one that the Community Foundation put together. That's more for the purposes of folks that want to volunteer or give or understand the causes within the county. So that comes to mind, as well as like obviously like 211 and its platform. But I think again, the user and the use cases are different. I think for 211, it's, you know, community resident client facing folks. And so just putting that out there to think through like, okay, with other products like that, what value have those provided to the community? And relative to this product, what the value proposition is. I don't know. I don't know the value of this in terms of like how it enhances collaboration within the group or how it affects, like if it's opened up publicly, what the value is to the public versus some of those other products. Just posing some thoughts and questions, less solution based.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Those
so we did review those, and we reviewed one additional one too. I can't remember what that one was called. But yeah, it's an open question about the use cases for this and the value of this, and that gets to whether it's worthwhile to update it or not. Good question.
Right. I see a couple more questions just about updating information. I'll drop my contact info here, but I think from a larger, perspective, we'll figure out a process that works on the longer term. So
And then we have
Nate, we have Nate with his hand up. Go ahead, Nate.
Thank you. I appreciate the pilot and the walkthrough of what you've worked on so far. I appreciate specifically the filter of being able to see who's a voting member, and I see the value if, for example, whenever there's new folks who are joining into the HRTC, or wanting to know more about who participates and may have an active vote on the HRTC, especially as things transition to the new format in which the state is pursuing. One aspect I think that could be added in, it might make it helpful if we're, using this for relationship and collaboration efforts, relationship building and collaboration efforts between the various members who are already present and listed on the tool, is a field for recent projects or current programs that each org wants to highlight. So that way, as people are clicking through each of these organizations' information, you might be able to see some examples of work that each org or group wants to highlight.
absolutely, really appreciate the feedback, Nate. I think that's certainly something we'll think about and how we can best serve out as we think about how this lives going forward. Thank you.
Great, we have time for a couple more questions. I know some of you are dropping comments in the chat. Feel free to come off mute and share those. Folks expressing that there's a lot of potential for this tool for additional collaboration efforts similar to the 2030 census. Reiterating Josefa's comments around use case scenarios. So yeah, thank you all for the input and the feedback here. Any others who would like to come off mute and share information? Questions you may have? All right, so maybe just to recap next steps, Brian, what would you like to leave the group with?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for your feedback. And I'll drop in my contact info after this as well if you didn't catch it on the first slide. Yeah, we're going to take them into consideration and think about how this, is going to live going forward, whether that's a version 2 or update process. So what to leave you with, please continue to take a look at it, click around, gather your thoughts and send them back to us.
Great, thank you, Brian. Appreciate you being here. Let's give Brian a virtual round of applause for taking the time to be here with us today. Thank you. And please do get your input to him so that we can refine this tool and make it as value added for all of you as possible. Thanks again, Brian. We're going to move into the next portion of the agenda, and this is item 5 around the strategy refinement. So this is a continuation of conversations we've been having in recent weeks around the strategies. Jesse and the team from OCPC has provided in the agenda packet for today's meeting a document that they've been compiling to reference the top vote getters for each category, but also to organize the strategies that surfaced as preferences under themes that align with some of the principles of this program from the state's perspective. And we, you'll see in the spreadsheet how it's either aligned or not aligned with the research that was done under Regional Plan Part 1, the community outreach process, and the criteria that the state has indicated in the draft for the funding as well. So for those of you who prefer the document in Spanish, we just finalized that this week, and this Excel file is now will be made available in the open source file for those of you who prefer it in Spanish to access it. Vamos a comenzar a parte de la agenda de esta reunión de hoy para seguir la conversación y las revisiones con las estrategias que hemos estado platicando las últimas semanas. En el correo electrónico que se les envió que mandó Jesse, viene incluido este documento que comparte las estrategias y fueron organizadas de una manera temática, donde los temas de importancia de no solamente las categorías que se ofrecieron, pero los temas de los temas del Estado fueron también organizadas en la última página del documento, y vamos a compartir hoy un poco de las preguntas y comentarios que tengan ustedes para seguir organizando y refinando la última lista de estrategias. Entonces vamos a comenzar esa conversación. So Jesse is going to walk us through a bit of an overview of how that document was organized in a more hopefully user-friendly manner to you all, to be able to quickly identify its relationship to the other pieces of this process, the research, community outreach, state criteria. It's organized under themes and priorities. And really the goal is to move the conversation, continue to refine and determine how we'd like to collectively finalize this list of priorities moving forward. And as we turn to Jesse and open it up for the group, I do want to just preface by saying that we want to encourage those of you from other sector groups to come off mute and offer some comments as well. So I'll be proactively inviting several of you from the different sectors to contribute as well, so that we can hear from you in this conversation, just like we do from others. So bear that in mind as we jump into this conversation. But before we do that, let's turn to Jesse to give us an overview and provide the latest on this document.
Yeah, hi everybody. I think this is just in response to this is in response to the comments of the last meeting, and so we're carrying this conversation over. We will be diligently working through us kind of finalizing the strategy framework, and then work with the state on kind of what template do they want to see this submitted in. But again, so the question was brought up. How does this line up to the research that was already done? Which is absolutely correct and important. How does this connect with the feedback that we heard from the rich community outreach and engagement we did, which was important? And then because we just found out the draft criteria for the state when it comes to projects, I think just 48 hours before we had our meeting 2 weeks ago, how does some of this stuff relate to that? And so I would just say that's just kind of just what we did. So we just went through all 3 documents and just quickly lifted up that whether it was mentioned in the document or to what degree was it mentioned in the document, to show that I think, there might be, if there would have been a few, but for the most part, I mean, everything is a yes, as has been discussed in some form or fashion. Obviously, I'll just show you read the strategy. Obviously, it's not going to be worded verbatim, but topics such as education and training, connections between education and employers, apprenticeships, support for small business, particularly BIPOC and women-owned businesses. Those themes came up in the research. Those things came up in the community outreach and engagement, and it's very clear in the draft criteria. So that's just what we have here as a reference for this group as you think about which ones you might want to consolidate, what language you might want to refine. And just so you know, we did it for the top 5. We know that we're only going to settle on the top 3, but if you think about consolidating, then maybe that 4th or 5th might move up into the top 3 potentially. So we wanted to make sure you had a reference point there as to its acknowledgement or reference in the research, in the community outreach and engagement, and the draft criteria. The one thing that I will note, particularly at least when it comes to, and you'll see this, is it's called RII, and I think I want to use this time to explain. So the state has rebranded, right? We were SURF, it's going to be California Jobs First. However, California Jobs First is intended to be broader than just SURF. However, the state hasn't filled in all the other initiatives that would eventually fall into that California Jobs First umbrella. So in some ways, people are using it interchangeably when that may not be true. It's just the only thing currently in that portfolio. More will come, and then those will all be, I guess, part of California Jobs First. The work that we have embarked upon really now is more the regional investment initiative as we think about selecting projects for funding. So that is kind of what we see when we see the RII project criteria. That's kind of what I'm referencing to. That being said, the work that we are also supposed to be doing is supposed to be a little bit broader. It's supposed to be able to identify and try to address all the major issues, or not all of them, but major issues, even if it's beyond economic development directly. So we have to be very aware of the funding source that is, now the Regional Investment Initiative, but also as this collective body, and as we move into, the next phase of this, is if there are challenges, obviously, beyond just more equitable and environmentally sustainable economic development, like how are we moving the needle? How are we identifying funding sources in order to improve the conditions in our community? So we always have to be holding those two things in our head here. But as it pertains to these strategies, though, I just wanted to let you know that just because something is a no on the RII project criteria, then it could just fall into the camp of this is the broader thing that we still want to address. So I would just say, like, just because there's a no, and there was maybe only a few, I wouldn't necessarily disqualify that as a strategy out of the gate, but it just wouldn't apply to the pot of funding, right, that's going to be available, potentially later this year, and then, supplemental years. So I just wanted to leave you with that. That's what we have. So again, as this group thinks about, and we have to start moving towards that, finalizing these languages, finalizing these strategies, that you at least are now a little bit better equipped on, does it line up with the research that was done? Are we addressing the actual needs of the community as they see them? And will it actually be fundable, at least through the RRI? All of these, I'm sure, will be fundable in some degree with other funding sources that would come from the state, and definitely the federal government, and possibly philanthropy. So,
Jesse, just ask.
Yeah.
Can you remind the group again what the RII is?
Yeah, so that's why absolutely. So the Regional Investment Initiative, I would say, is what we kind of thought, or that's more what SURF is now becoming, right? So when we embarked upon this process, we did research, or we were supposed to do research. We were supposed to do strategy development, which is kind of the phase we're in now. And then we were supposed to select our priority projects based on those strategies. If that was SURF, I mean, the Project Investment Initiative, are those projects that we will submit to the state for priority, or our priorities to be funded from the state in competition with the other regions. And again, I think that the rebrand, I mean, the state has a longer vision. It doesn't really do us much service here as a region, because now you have kind of two names to work with to be accurate. But I would say that the Regional Investment Initiative is more the projects that we want to elevate as a region to receive funding from the state. That's like the clearest way. And again, I understand it's very unclear when you have like two names for one thing. But that's where we're at currently with the state rebrand. So that's the reminder there. So with that, again, I think I want to bring it back to the group. You can send it to me via email, this conversation about, ideas around, do we like the top three? Do we want to consolidate certain themes to open up space for another strategy or topic to be included for us to work on it kind of as a group? Do we like the language as it currently stands? Are there refinements to these things? I'm going to need that feedback. Again, it could be on this, or you guys can digest it and send emails. But at some point, we have to work on agreeing to what we will submit as a framework of strategies, and what I would say probably the values as an organization, as far as what we want to try to address as a group. So unless there's any questions, I throw it back to the group to kind of hear those thoughts, feedbacks, concerns.
Great, thank you, Jesse. And without calling on individual people, I'm going to call on sectors, and with the hopes that some of you within those sectors will have a question or would like to make a comment. But is there anybody from the philanthropic sector here interested in offering some insight or giving direction to the group on some strategy around narrowing down those strategies that Jesse just described. Anyone from philanthropy? How about folks representing business groups, business associations, or from an individual business itself? Anybody interested in making a question or comment? Maybe some clarifying comments. Tony, I see you came off mute. You certainly can jump in and ask a question.
Well, one suggestion I have is maybe we could look at people want to get together in their primary sector or some subgroup of the primary sector and look across all the categories and aggregate those things that you're identifying that are high ranking that are similar. So for instance, the business sector may be interested in some of the workforce because, successful businesses grow when they hire people. So it isn't about just saying if it isn't a specific business development strategy, don't look at it, but maybe encouraging people to go into groups and try to put together kind of what are they seeing as the top ranking things that relate from where they sit. And that might give a view because that might help aggregate. Like there's a number on apprentice, as you've mentioned, there's a number on entrepreneurship. And so that might help us get some sentences that might be more summarizing. So just an idea.
Thank you, Tony. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony. That's a great input. Sorry, I think just for the sake of this group, right, like I think if you want to look at this tab, this is where they're kind of sorted, and the ones in red are the ones that are a top vote getter. So if you want to look at what we currently have as far as a consolidation, I think the idea of breaking us down into maybe our stakeholder groups, we can absolutely do that as well. But just if for people who want to toy around with it already, in anticipation of that, you kind of have at least some layout here of similar topics while also listing which ones were the top vote getters. So we're not pulling, a bottom vote getter just because that particular person liked it and trying to shoehorn it into one that's already a top vote getter.
So aquí Jesse está explicando que en esa página del documento donde en español va a estar titulado Mapeo de Estrategias, ahí están organizadas de una manera con los temas, como miran ahí la fuerza laboral, educación, programas de aprendizaje. Están organizadas las estrategias por temas, pero las que tienen el texto en rojo fueron las que surgieron como preferencias, estrategias principales en la encuesta, en la votación. Entonces, es una manera para que visualmente puedan identificar rápidamente las estrategias que fueron de prioridad para el grupo y en qué rama de tema caen. Y entonces es otra manera para poder combinar varias de estas estrategias para tal vez hacer campo para otras. Es esa página del documento, están organizadas así para ayudar con ese proceso. Great. Well, let me invite others to come forth and offer some comments too, just to give you some dedicated space to ask questions as well. Anybody from a government agency, whether it be the county, a special district, a local municipality, anybody want to come off mute and offer some comments or suggestions to this process? And how about folks from education, from the education sector, whether you be pre-K to 12 school district, community college representative, four-year university college representative, any comments that you have from the educational perspective on some of these strategies or the process for narrowing down the amount of strategies to complement what's maybe already been said here?
Hi, yeah, sure. I can give some feedback.
Hey, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, to what Jesse mentioned for narrowing down the strategies. So I'm happy to hear it. I don't have like anything to add to that. I'm just happy to hear about the process.
Great, thank you so much. And I do see other comments in the chat. Myra, it looks like you're having some issues with your microphone, but thank you for sharing your thoughts in the chat related to the philanthropic community. We'll certainly take note of those comments. And anyone else from education and folks from CSU Fullerton or UC Irvine or some of the surrounding community colleges that want to offer some comments? Some of the other private institutions? Okay, well, I certainly want to give space to these other groups that we want to hear from the workforce sector, folks from the workforce development boards or training centers, representatives of organized labor. Any comments or questions you'd like to offer to the group here with regards to this exercise?
This is Krista Sheehan with Hope Builders. Sorry, my camera's
No worries. Welcome,
acting
Krista.
kind of funky. Just a very straightforward point, but when we talk about workforce and especially workforce and education, just want to make sure we broaden our understanding to think of folks who are not in traditional educational systems, right? So when I look at that, I immediately think, it's high school or maybe college age. So just kind of wanted to emphasize that we're looking at broad. We're defining people who could be engaged in workforce and education broadly.
Great, thank you, Krista, for that reminder and those set of comments. I think that's you see that reflected in some of the strategies as well within these categories. So thank you for sharing that here today. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Doug with IBW Building Trades.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Hey, these things, we've been doing apprenticeships for 100 years, and this looks good to me. It's going to, the idea of this is to, push forward new businesses that have opportunities to hire and then train people in all the skills, soft skills, hard skills, to go into those industries. So I like all these things, and the building trades, the apprenticeships, are small businesses that partner with us and we're signatory to us. It looks good. Thank you. Good job, folks.
Great. Thank you, Doug, for that reassurance and for those comments here to the group. Appreciate that. I do see that Adrina, you want to come off mute? I think if we can get her to participate in her comments, it looks like she's having trouble with coming off of mute, but we certainly want to hear from you. Looks like you have something to share. Can you hear us, Adrina?
So I promoted them both the panelists. If you guys can both accept this time, it'd be helpful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Audrina Tarantonians with Hospitality Training Academy. I'm going to echo what my previous commenter in terms of we're looking at not only traditional but non-traditional apprenticeship pathways that links to union jobs and good paying jobs that is creating sustainable income and upscaling. So we leverage the workforce development funds and opportunities to, to serve the vulnerable population, but also creating a true pathways to the jobs and, stackable credential. I love, if we're going to spend any dollars in trainings and we're going to focus on training, those needs to be apprenticeship, register apprenticeship program that is truly linked to a job. So I love all the strategies that's going through the high road training that state has. The initiative should be the front runner in terms of doing any kind of training and upscaling for our folks and communities in Orange County.
Great. Thank you so much, Adrina, for those comments. Very helpful.
Thank you.
We certainly want to take all that into consideration and encourage others from this sector to come off mute and offer questions. Yosef, I see you have a hand up. Let's open it up to others. Go ahead, Yosefa.
Thank you, Ismail. I'm not sure if I'm participating in the right group, but
That's okay. Just jump in. No
yeah,
worries.
some thoughts on just as I look at these at a high level, particularly the left 4 columns around housing, apprenticeship, workforce, and small business. They imply very much programs and collaboration amongst organizations or service providers, which is great. And I appreciate the leanings towards disinvested neighborhoods or communities that are identified there. I say that though that we also need to be mindful that we don't approach these with a build it and they will come versus meet people where they are at. And so I think that that 6th column around coalition building, or I forget what it's called, the collaboration community, or I forget. Yeah.
Communication and resources.
Basically the ability to not only create these amazing opportunities, but also to be intentional about engagement with those who would benefit from these the most. And what are those vehicles to engage communities, to connect them to these programs, products, and services. So just commentary on how important that column is as well, so that these other items that are more tangible programmatic things provide value to those in which this program is focused on, and that's on the disinvested communities and residents.
Thank you, Josefa, for those comments. And we do have a couple other hands up. Let's go to Byron. Welcome, Byron.
Hi, everybody. Is there a drop dead date that this needs to be finalized? Because with so many different organizations, individuals, and sectors, I don't think everyone's going to be happy, totally happy with everything. So I think if there is a dead date, we should say that and say, this is going to be, we need to have this all done by this date.
Yeah, ultimately there is. I think what can be a challenge, the only thing is we don't know what the state, if the state is, and the state says, they're going to send us a template, so of maybe what the strategy document should look like. It all has to be submitted by the end of August. I know we have a lot of time there. However, that's just not this, right? Because I guess my sense is I doubt it's just going to be, a list of, in our case, 21 things that we want to do. So we have to somewhat wait on that template, because if they want, I said, more meat on some of these things, then we're going to have to develop those. We'll have those kind of drafted for you for editing. So that's one thing. Like, ultimately, the thing needs to be in final form submitted by the end of August. I will say, you guys have already voted. So, the question is, again, consolidating of similar ideas. It's not as if we can open this box all over again and then take, some of these that were less vote getters, and I could just let me just hop over to a specific tab. Again, it's not as if really you can just pull out, let's just say this last one, lever international chambers to deploy them as part of OC's recovery. As I said, no one's going to be shoehorning that into one of these top ones just so they feel like they're included in the strategy. So you guys are pretty clear in the framework that these are the top 3. The question is, like, and this is a good example, if 1 and 2 are very similar, would this open up this one in blue to be now in the top 3? That's really what you guys are working on. And of course, refining language a little bit. So Byron, I think you're right. However, I don't think everything's busted open all over again for discussion. There are severe limitations into kind of what can be done here at this point. So I added a little bit more. All I'm saying is I think we need the template from the state, or if they say we're going to defer to the region, then that's fine too. We can probably move a little bit quicker. But at the very least, or absolutely, that whatever the state wants to see as it pertains to strategies has to be delivered by the end of August.
All right, thank you for the question, Byron, and Jesse for that explanation. Let's turn to Teresa, who has her hand up. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, I also was having problems with my mic this morning too, so I don't know what's up with the computers today. But for those of you that don't know FAM, or Family Assistance Ministries, we are, to make a very short, long introduction shorter, is that we concentrate on the prevention of hunger and homeless. So in regards to everything that we have been working on. And I am in no means meaning that we should change any of this stuff, because I think it's great. I think it's moving along. But for the sector that I am helping with, what I just want to make sure is that we think about how we bring that full circle back around to our types of agencies. Because for us, when I started explaining what SURF was doing in the beginning, or as we made these changes towards, the job insecurities and things like that, people didn't understand how we related into this. And the one thing that I kept saying to them, this is perfect for us as long as we bring it full circle, because all of our clients, that is part of their problem. They need training, they need new jobs, they need better understanding of what's out there in the community for them. So for all of this that we're doing, I think if we bring that full circle to the people that all of the agencies like ours in South Orange County or Orange County are serving, that brings it full circle and brings those people up, because that's probably one of the biggest things when we're working with our clients that we have is we want to get them to the next level and we want to move them forward. We don't have the information. We don't have the ability. We don't know what to recommend to them as far as either skills training, job training, a new job. So as we develop this, I hope we include a pathway for agencies like ours, because I'm looking at everything you guys are doing here, or we are all doing here, as amazing that we can, as long as we bring it full circle, that we get that information to our clients, if that makes sense. I hope that all made sense.
Yeah, it is. And noted, thank you. I would say just in response is a few things. One is, a big part of this work is bringing what you might call, again, you might use yourself non-traditional people into this space, right? It's not directly the services you provide. But now, because you're involved in this process, we understand the interdependence of all these things. Now there's a way maybe for FAM to become involved in some of these things to directly address these things potentially. But then it also goes to Josefa's point of, you are in constant communication with residents who could benefit from the programs that we were going to develop and ask for funding. And that is that mechanism of don't just build and watch them come, but now FAM is the vehicle in which you can pull residents to truly benefit and not say, I had no idea that program exists and whatever we do just sits empty or underperforms. So I think those are kind of, for everyone who kind of feels that way, it's part of this process is to bring people who don't traditionally have these conversations into the process. But also, of course, you're the best messenger to also ultimately bring in residents to benefit, because that's, I think, why we're all here, is to actually have programs that work for residents of Orange County, of which you're a great ambassador for.
Yeah. Thank you. And along with that is because for us, all of our clients have case managers. So it's a perfect vehicle. We get this information to the case managers, and they in turn are able to give it to all the people we're trying to help with this stuff. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. And before we move into the final section of today's agenda, I do want to give for this conversation on the strategies and opportunity for members of representing our communities to come off mute, raise their hand and make comments in the language of their choice, whether that be Khmer, Korean, Arabic, Espanol. We certainly want to hear from you all and what you've been thinking about with these strategies as it pertains to the broader communities that you're here representing at this table. So ustedes que de habla hispana, si gustan compartir algo en español sobre sus ideas o sugerencias que tienen, recomendaciones para cómo determinar una lista final de esas estrategias, posiblemente hacer combinaciones de estrategias que miren en rojo, que fueron las que recibieron las votaciones más altas. Pero si tienen ideas o comentarios o dudas sobre el proceso, los invitamos que hagan esos comentarios ahorita antes de seguir con el resto de la agenda. ¿Alguno de ustedes gusta comentar o hacer una pregunta? Y si no, también está bien, podemos platicar más sobre el proceso el martes cuando tengamos nuestro repaso. I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll move into the next part of our agenda. So this will continue to be an ongoing conversation in upcoming weeks with our meetings. And so just keep this tool handy. And if there's other requests or suggestions you have for bringing this information to you in a way that can be synthesized or organized differently to help you think through the refinement process, how to land on a final set of strategy frameworks. Please let us know so that we can try to organize that for you and develop something that is in response to your recommendations. So thank you all for your comments and questions on this part of the agenda. Thank you, Jesse, for making yourself available to help answer some of these questions. I'm going to move.
Yeah.
I'm going to move us into the next section, which is pertains to the scope of work related to sector coordinators for the Catalyst Fund. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, talk about this layer of the initiative, and talk about how the funds that will be brought to Orange County to help support the pre-development activities under the Catalyst funding layer of this project. There's an opportunity to select what is called investment sector coordinators, people that will be available to really provide some expertise and technical assistance and support. But there can't be more than 5. And so we want to have a conversation a little bit about that today, some of the criteria, the scope of work that was under consideration. And so I'm going to turn it to Jesse to walk us through these couple of slides related to the Catalyst investment sector coordinators, and we'll open it up for questions after he's done presenting. And again, we'll invite some of you who are here representing specific sectors to make some comments, but the floor will be open for all of you to ask questions as well. Jesse, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ish. So absolutely is switching gear. So, before we embarked on this, when we embarked on this process, we did not know that, Catalyst was going to become a thing, right? So this was something that was introduced somewhat recently. And so Catalyst was ensuring that every region got a set amount of the same amount of money. It was $14 million in total in order to do what the state recognizes, again, they're calling pre-development work. That is, there's this recognition that there are probably a lot of great projects out there that just aren't even eligible for state and federal funding because most of those funding sources are all about implementable projects. And so what could the state do in order to support those ideas to receive or to do the things that they have to do in order to be eligible? So of that, we will have $9 million that this group, we actually do not even have to go to the state. This group can approve of the activities, and on the next slide are the list of activities, but that's for this group to spend in order to support those projects so they could be eligible for much larger pots of funding in the future. But with that though, we need people who kind of know what they're doing in this space. And so we are allowed to select up to 5. We do have 5 industry sectors as well, but this is just straight from the SFP. And so what are their responsibilities? This is somewhat of a refresher. We have gone over this previously, but here are their core tasks. And primarily the question, I don't mean to kind of read these, is just as we start developing a scope of work for the region, as we start or scope of work for these jobs or even job descriptions, as me and the team at OCBC probably start drafting something, are there things that you want to see potentially beyond this that they can't contradict this, but they could be beyond this for us to consider as before we submit a draft to you for all of you to review. But again, these are the primary responsibilities of the 5. And so we just wanted to make sure that, before we take this and turn it into a scope of work, I believe the state is also trying to draft some templates as well that we could reference. But I want to see if there's anything other than beyond what's listed here that you'd want to see that's important for as a skill set or as experience for these investment sector coordinators before, of course, we draft and then publish some sort of scope of work or a request for qualifications. And you get time to read this, but this is, again, this is another opportunity to provide input verbally, put it in the chat if you want to email me afterwards, but we always want to provide these platforms because, again, this is all driven by you.
Great, thank you, Jesse. Let's open it up for some comments.
Yeah. So I can go to one second. And just if you want to know what the pre-development, again, you guys had the slides in your agenda packet, but here are the things that will ultimately fund with the $9 million. But of course, these consultants, these coordinators have to have familiarity in order to advise all of you on, is this the right dollar amount to pay for this activity? Is this feasible? Is it not? is this actually the thing that they need in order to move themselves along, to implementation funding? But here's the full list of activities that we would ultimately fund with the 9 million. But of course, the vector sector coordinators need to be familiar with as well. But I'll go back to the responsibilities, but I want to know that you guys all have that in your deck as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesse. There's a question in the chat from Nate related to if you can explain a little bit more of the RFQ request for qualifications process.
Yeah, so that's where to be honest, like we're gonna have to we're gonna discuss process as a group. I don't have an answer for you, primarily just because and this is gonna be true of projects, but I'd like to hear people's ideas. In some ways, the amount of submissions you get might make certain processes more feasible or not. And so I think what we want is just to be able to see who submitted. And then, we would obviously share whether it's a questionnaire with that RFQ, or if they're doing some sort of write-up, or if we do some sort of set of interviews that we can record and share with all of you, exactly what that process is. All I want to do is just make sure that the content in what will eventually be that RFQ scope of work is what you want to see. But I think we will definitely discuss process before we embark upon it. But I'd like to wait to see how many submissions we get, lay that all on the table for this group to be aware of, and then decide what the best process is to select from that group. Again, I think this one will be smaller, admittedly, but if you think about projects, so like because eventually we're going to get there, I'm sure a process, if we receive 25 projects versus 150, will be different in how we want a body like this to sort through this, review, and make selections. So I don't want to set down a process and realize that it's just less feasible and have to go back. I'd actually rather have the set of applicants already finalized, although not selected. And then you could say, like, there's 25 and we're selecting 5 slots. What's a reasonable process for us to get from that 25 to 5? But again, that 25 is just a number. Then that number could be 50 people might want to apply to do this job, or 100. I'm not quite sure. And the process may be impacted by how many applicants we have.
Great, thank you, Jesse. And there are a couple of questions. Let me go to Teresa first. Teresa, was that a new question, or was that a holdover hand up from the previous section of the agenda?
Sorry, holdover.
Okay, gotcha. Just wanted to make sure. We had Adrina in the queue first, and then we'll go to, I'll address Catherine's question in the chat. Go ahead, Adrina.
Thank you so much. Two comments. One of it is, I think we got to look at it as one aspect of the job being the sector focus and connecting with laborers, businesses, and employment aspect of it. The other position can be community-based navigator, like individuals that we can add on more vulnerable population within the community that, we had a great representation from Cambodian community. We can do the same thing with the Asian community. Like, how can we expand our reach to other community members that are vulnerable? And I was gonna say, like, you kind of need to have that workforce, labor union, higher role training expertise as well. So you're kind of looking at 3 tiers of sector-based, community-based navigators, and also workforce, higher role training, and labor management kind of expertise, because each of these has different set of skills for individual that you're looking for. So it will broaden our reach within services that we're providing.
Yeah, we can make that more explicit, right? This is us adding to what's already listed. So absolutely, thank you for that input.
And we have a question in the chat from Catherine Moniz, request if this group can convene in person to review this information discuss more thoroughly again. And so that's more of a
this information, or the actual selection of the.
Yeah, let me invite Catherine, if you're available, to come off mute and maybe share a little bit more of your thoughts on that question.
Let me get her off. She might.
Okay. All right, Catherine, let us know if you're ready to come on, jump on here.
I'll try to promote you to panelist, Catherine.
All right, Catherine, can you hear us?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
We can now. Yes, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. More about. I'm sorry, Jesse. Can you repeat what you said.
You want to review like this about the responsibilities and then what pre-development activities are in person, or you want to be able to, the process of selecting these investment sector coordinators should be in person?
Yeah, I think the process of selecting, and so I just want to make a comment because, Adrina, your comments are spot on, and everyone else's. I want to take a step back in terms of like addressing vulnerable communities and young people in Orange County and the skill level at which we find them. I don't think anybody likes to discuss the fact that we've got, 18 to 25-year-olds who are at least coming to us at 5th grade reading level and math levels. And so you can provide all the trainings that you want and all the certifications, but if they do not have the ability to access that training, what are the thoughts behind how we bring them up so that they can actually access all these wonderful things that we're thinking about here? So that was just the comment that I wanted to make.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would say, Catherine, is I think that's where if we get to the project side of things, or even so less so these activities, because these activities ultimately fund an idea or project, right? We want to support that idea or project through these activities. So
Correct.
I think those are all things that when we get to, on top of what the state's kind of that draft project criteria that we briefly discussed last time about, if Orange County wants to be more explicit in making sure that the people who are submitting these proposals have thought that through and we like their approach, that it's in there essentially, right? Like that, I think that's what we would try to do when we get to the actual projects. And again, in this context, as we think about funding their pre-development activities, that could very much be a question for them to make sure that they legitimately answer. And if we don't like that answer, then we say, well, we don't want to give you the funding for the pre-development activity because we don't like this and other things that you're not really thinking through accurately or appropriately or not deep enough.
Got it. Thank you.
We have a hand up from Nate. Nate, let's go to you.
Thank you. My question in the chat about wanting some more information about the request for qualifications was based more on wanting to understand, as we're considering this position of a coordinator, where are the qualifications for this individual for our purposes?
Oh, sorry. All we have is this previous slide from the state's the state's RFP in order to receive Catalyst funding.
Okay, so does that mean that we ourselves are not able to kind of put some qualifications we would want to see in a coordinator who's going to fill this role?
So long as it doesn't contradict, we can always add, we can always supplement.
Okay, good to know, because then that leads me to my next point, which is that from our point of view at Cooperación and with some of the folks who we work with in Santa Ana, it would be helpful, I think, for this individual to have, some sort of experience or at least knowledge of or familiarity in building community wealth in disinvesting communities or aspects of racial equity, if not racial equity altogether. The factors which cause displacement within various disinvested communities, community engagement, and the prevention of displacement. And when I was looking at some of the new state documents that you had sent us photos/scans of in an email, it was good to see that community assets and ownership and control, they were bringing up points about co-ops and CLTs. And so I think, this coordinator position, if they have knowledge or familiarity with those types of community-based initiatives, that would be helpful for this individual as well.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah, so that's the feedback we want to hear. Again, before we start drafting something, or I start drafting something, better to have that on the front end than drafting something and then getting it on the back end. So thank you.
Other questions from the group or comments, suggestions? We turn to our friends from the communities. Si tienen preguntas sobre este proceso que acaba de describir Jesse, con estas posiciones que se van a estar contemplando para las industrias de prioridad en los sectores. Esta página que ven aquí en la pantalla es la única criteria que tenemos al momento del Estado para determinar ah, ah, las responsabilidades de las personas que entrarían a estas posiciones. Pero si tienen preguntas o comentarios sobre otros elementos que las personas que llenen estas posiciones deben de tener, calificaciones o talentos que gusten ver, los invitamos que hagan comentarios.
Then please, in the chat, you can email me. Again, we just want to use multiple opportunities. Some people like verbal, some people like in writing, in order to provide this input now. And then so it informs us as we draft something for you to review at a future meeting.
Very good. I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat or hands raised here, so we'll move into our final item. But before we adjourn, want to bring to your attention, you probably all saw the email from Jesse related to a letter of support to help preserve the California Jobs First funding. You know, there are some considerations given the state of the budget in Sacramento with programs across the board, and we certainly want to. We're fortunate that we have the Newsom administration's support with this program, and we want to continue to protect the funding for this program so we can move into the next phases of implementation in the coming months and the next couple of years. But like it is a process every year, the state legislators sometimes have their own priorities when they're balancing budgets, and so this California Jobs First program isn't guaranteed to have that safety that we all hope it has in the funding conversation. So the exercise and the push with the letter writing campaign was to just remind the legislators in Sacramento, especially those within your delegation in Orange County who can be advocates for what's happening with this project, to share with their peers the importance of preserving the funding for this program so that it allows us to collectively implement what we're all planning around for the last year. So, maybe I hate to put her on the spot, but because of her experience in working with the legislator and specifically the Jobs and Economic Development Committee, Tony, if there's any insight or suggestions, recommendations from your years of experience in staffing that committee, what could you offer the group here to think about in terms of advocacy and just giving those reminders to our elected officials about the importance of this program and the potential that it's providing to this collective work.
Which I think she might have dropped off.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if she's still here. She's not, but I know some of you had questions about the letter. I know I spoke to a couple of you from the community groups, and we clarified some of the questions. I basically described what I just shared. The other thing I want to mention is there was this first opportunity. It won't be the last. There will be opportunities in the foreseeable future for you to contribute to this effort of advocacy for and showing support for the importance of the funding. So don't feel bad if you didn't get your letter in or your email in on time. There'll be, we're anticipating there'll be further opportunities in the coming months to continue to remind our elected officials in Sacramento about the importance of preserving the funding for this program in the middle of these discussions they're having around balancing the state budget. We want to make sure that, this is not one of the programs that they're looking at for making, the budget balance. So keep that in mind. And the other thing I'll add is, don't worry about having, super formalized letterhead or, a process that, that's expected. I think, for those of you who are here representing community organizations, residents, an email, expressing who you are who you're representing and your involvement with this process is also sufficient and can be helpful in the process as well. So you don't have to feel like you can't participate if you don't have the sort of organizational capacity that perhaps others have. So your contributions are encouraged as well. There's a question in the chat, Jesse, about the letters. I think we had talked about those coming to you, but is there a process that you prefer to moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, if that's you, that's fine. We also leave you with the staff members of the specific legislators who are, voting on these things. So we will continue to update you. We just had, so just because there was a hearing based on SURF and other topics, that's why we tried to get something out quickly. As we're aware of it being discussed or potentially, it being on the chopping block, just to be candid, then we will notify you. And that might come straight to me. Or if it's just one legislator that we're really trying to target, then we would just leave you with the appropriate staff contact. Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Good questions. Thank you, Adrina, and others. So if you have any other comments or questions regarding that process, certainly invite you to come off mute or drop them in the chat or just follow up after today's meeting with Jesse. But appreciate those of you who were able to sneak those in and get them to the right people with that request a couple of weeks ago. So thank you. Any final thoughts or questions from the group? Announcements, parting words, comentarios, anuncios que gustan hacer aquí con los compañeros, las compañeras de la iniciativa antes de terminar la reunión de hoy. Okay, Jesse, or Catherine, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm good.
Got it.
Ish, I think we're good. We'll give people 3 minutes back of their day.
Yeah. And quick reminder, our next meeting is in
Yeah, so it's just 2 weeks from today. So I said it in the email, but I think because with the state pushing back certain things, we want to keep the 2 meetings a month until Catalyst starts. Then I think we could slow it down to once a month. So I appreciate people's effort. I know that we're asking a lot, but if we can get through April, we're in a good position as a region to slow things down and put more time back in your pocket. So just bear with us. It's almost here, just 3 more meetings in this sequence, and then we'll slow it down for all of you. I know everyone's super busy, but we appreciate your commitment.
Yeah, and I just want to share that as you all are contemplating slowing down, that you're in a very envious position. Other regions are trying to scale up just to catch up. So kudos to you all for where you're at in your process and your timeline, and you're certainly making really good inroads. And look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. And I appreciate your time today. Have a good weekend.
Everyone.
Be safe out there. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Lish.
Thank you, everyone.